welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be diving into the world of Ray Kurzweil
Okay.
and his book, The Singularity Is Near. You've given us some pretty fascinating excerpts to work with.
Yeah.
So we're ready to unpack his vision of accelerating technological change. We'll explore what this singularity really means and consider its potential impact, both good and maybe some of the more challenging aspects.
Yeah, Kurzweil presents a pretty compelling argument. And it's really built around this idea of the law of accelerating returns.
Okay.
It's this idea that technological progress, it's not linear, it's exponential. And we kind of think in these straight lines.
Wait.
We assume that the future is going to be a slightly faster version of the past.
Right.
But history kind of tells a different story.
So instead of slow and steady wins the race, it's more like things start slow, but then suddenly, whoosh, we're in a whole new world.
Exactly, yeah. Classic example is Moore's Law. And it describes how the number of transistors that they can squeeze onto a microchip doubles roughly every 2 years. This has held true for decades and has really led to this incredible shrinking and powering up of our devices. Think about it, those massive room-sized computers from decades ago, they had less computing power than the smartphone
Right.
that you probably have in your pocket right now.
That's mind-blowing. But Kurzweil doesn't just stop at microchips, does he?
Yeah.
He applies this law of accelerating returns to, the entire history of evolution.
Exactly. He breaks evolution down into these distinct epochs, starting from the basic building blocks of matter, and then moving through the emergence of life, intelligence, and then finally technology. So we're currently in Epoch 4, but Kurzweil argues that we're on the cusp of Epoch 5.
And Epoch 5 is where things get really wild, right? It's the merging of human intelligence with artificial intelligence, leading to this singularity event.
Yeah.
What exactly happens at this point?
Yeah, so Kurzweil suggests that as AI develops, it will eventually surpass human intelligence by an unimaginable degree. He's talking about intelligence that exceeds our own by trillions of times.
Trillions.
Yeah.
That's a hard number to even grasp.
Yeah.
How does he envision us getting to that point? What are the key technological advancements that would need to happen?
Yeah, so one crucial area is this ongoing effort to reverse engineer the human brain. Scientists are making some incredible strides in understanding how different parts of the brain function, and by mapping these intricate networks, we could create advanced AI systems that can, mimic and ultimately surpass
Right.
our cognitive abilities.
So it's not just about AI being good at calculations or playing games. It's about AI that can think and learn and maybe even have emotions like humans do.
That's the idea, yeah.
Yeah.
Kurzweil believes that these AI systems, unconstrained by the biological limits of our brains, could evolve at an exponential rate, rapidly surpassing our capabilities.
But how would we even interact with this superintelligence? Would it be like having a conversation with a supercomputer?
Well, Kurzweil predicts the development of nanobots, these incredibly tiny robots that can interact directly with our neurons. Imagine having billions of these microscopic machines in your brain,
Wow.
enhancing your memory, your learning abilities, and even enabling direct brain-to-brain communication.
That's wild. But doesn't that blur the line between human and machine? What happens to our sense of self, our individuality, if we're all interconnected with technology and superintelligent AI?
Those are some really big questions, and that's one of the fascinating things about Kurzweil's vision. It forces us to confront some really fundamental issues about what it means to be human in an age of accelerating technology.
It seems like we're on the verge of a completely different reality, one with incredible possibilities, but also some potentially huge challenges.
Absolutely. And to understand those challenges, we need to dig deeper into Kurzweil's vision of nanotechnology and its potential to revolutionize not just our minds, but the entire physical world.
All right, so let's dive into that next. What exactly is nanotechnology, and how does Kurzweil see it shaping our future? Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Last time we were starting to explore Ray Kurzweil's vision of the future, particularly how the law of accelerating returns might lead us to a technological singularity. Pretty mind-blowing stuff.
It is, and Kurzweil doesn't just stop at describing this singularity. He goes on to paint a picture of what life might be like after this point, and it's both exciting and a little daunting.
Okay, so let's start with the exciting part. Kurzweil seems pretty optimistic about the singularity, doesn't he? What does he see as the potential benefits?
He does, he really does. Kurzweil believes that the singularity represents this kind of transcendence for humanity, a point where we overcome the limitations of our biology and open up this whole new chapter in our evolution. And he believes that technology, specifically what he calls GNR genetics, nanotechnology, and robotics, will be the key to achieving this.
GNR got it. But what does that look like in practical terms? How would these technologies actually benefit us?
Well, take healthcare, for example.
Yeah.
Kurzweil argues that advances in biotechnology will totally revolutionize medicine, allowing us to treat and even cure diseases that are currently incurable. He believes that we'll be able to conquer things like cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, and even extend our lifespan significantly.
Extend our lifespans. How much are we talking here?
Well, Kurzweil believes that with a combination of genetic engineering, advanced medical therapies, and nanotechnology, we'll eventually be able to slow down and even reverse the aging process. He imagines a future where we can continually repair and rejuvenate our bodies at a cellular level, essentially turning back the clock on aging.
So we might actually be able to live for hundreds of years. That's a pretty radical idea.
It is radical, but Kurzweil sees it as a natural progression of our technological development. And he believes the benefits of GNR go far beyond healthcare. Imagine a world where nanotechnology allows us to manufacture any product we need, from food to clothing to houses,
Wow.
at virtually no cost. It would completely transform our economy and our relationship with the material world.
So scarcity becomes a thing of the past. We could potentially solve some of the biggest challenges facing humanity, like poverty and hunger.
Exactly. And Kurzweil believes this abundance will extend beyond just the material world. He envisions a future where we have access to, almost limitless knowledge and information thanks to advanced AI and brain-computer interfaces. We could potentially learn anything we want instantly, just by tapping into vast databases with our minds.
It's a pretty utopian vision, isn't it?
Yeah.
A world without disease, poverty, or ignorance. But I have to admit, it all sounds a little too good to be true. What about the potential downsides? Surely Kurzweil acknowledges that there are risks involved with this level of technological advancement.
Oh, he does, and to his credit, he doesn't shy away from discussing those risks. In fact, he dedicates a good portion of his book to exploring what he calls the dangerous futures of GNR.
Okay, so let's talk about those. What are some of the biggest concerns that Kurzweil raises?
Well, one of the most serious risks that he discusses is the potential for self-replicating nanobots to get out of control.
Okay.
Remember those tiny robots we talked about earlier, the ones that could interact with our brains? Well, if those nanobots were designed to replicate themselves and something went wrong with their programming, they could theoretically consume all the matter on Earth, turning everything into this uniform gray goo.
That sounds like something out of a science fiction horror movie.
It does, but it's a possibility that we need to take seriously.
Right.
Kurzweil acknowledges that self-replication is a powerful tool, but it's also a double-edged sword. We need to be incredibly careful with how we design and control these technologies.
What about the risks of artificial intelligence? We've all seen those movies where AI becomes self-aware and decides to wipe out humanity. Does Kurzweil think that's a realistic concern?
He addresses that concern, but his perspective is a bit more nuanced than the typical Hollywood scenario. Kurzweil believes that the development of superintelligent AI is practically inevitable given the law of accelerating returns. But he doesn't necessarily see it as a threat. He argues that AI will emerge from our own civilization, so it will be embedded with our values and goals.
So he thinks AI will be more like a helpful partner than a dangerous adversary.
That's his view. He sees AI as an extension of ourselves, a tool that we can use to solve problems and improve our lives. But he also emphasizes that we need to be extremely careful in how we design and implement AI systems. He stresses the importance of ethical guidelines, strong safeguards, and ongoing monitoring to make sure that AI stays aligned with human values and goals.
It's a bit like walking a tightrope, isn't it? We're trying to harness these incredibly powerful technologies, but we also need to make sure they don't spin out of control.
That's a good analogy. And Kurzweil acknowledges that there's no guarantee of success. But he argues that we can't simply shy away from these technologies out of fear. The law of accelerating returns dictates that they're coming, whether we're ready or not.
So if we can't avoid the singularity, how do we prepare for it? What does Kurzweil suggest we do to navigate this uncertain future?
He advocates for a proactive approach. He argues that we need to have open and honest discussions about the potential benefits and risks of these technologies. We need to establish ethical guidelines and regulatory frameworks to ensure they're developed and used responsibly. And perhaps most importantly, we need to invest heavily in defensive technologies to protect ourselves from potential threats.
It almost sounds like we're talking about a technological arms race.
In a way, yes, but the race isn't against some external enemy. It's a race against our own potential for self-destruction. We need to develop the wisdom and foresight to use these technologies for good while protecting ourselves from their potential for harm.
Okay, so those are some pretty big ideas. But what about the individual? What could, the average person do to prepare for a future where technology is advancing at such a rapid pace?
Well, one of the most important things is to stay informed. Keep up with the latest developments in science and technology, especially in fields like artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and nanotechnology.
So don't just bury your head in the sand and pretend it's not happening.
Exactly. The more you understand about these technologies, the better equipped you'll be to navigate the changes they bring and make informed choices about how you want to engage with them. And another important thing is to embrace lifelong learning.
You mean we're all going to have to become, tech experts?
Not necessarily. It's more about developing a mindset of adaptability and a willingness to keep learning throughout your life. The singularity will accelerate the pace of change in almost every aspect of our lives. Those who are curious, flexible, and open to new ideas will be best positioned to thrive.
So it's not just about learning new skills, it's about cultivating a certain attitude towards change and innovation.
Exactly. And finally, I would encourage listeners to think critically and engage in constructive dialogue about these issues. Don't just accept Kurzweil's vision, or anyone else's for that matter.
Right.
Explore different perspectives, challenge assumptions, and consider the full spectrum of possibilities, both positive and negative. The future isn't predetermined, it's something we create through our choices and actions.
That's some really great advice. But we're not done with Kurzweil's vision yet, are we? There's still this whole concept of uploading our consciousness to computers, and I have to admit, I'm struggling to wrap my head around that one.
It is a mind-bending idea. And in the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore that concept in more detail, along with some of the other philosophical questions raised by the singularity. We'll delve into Kurzweil's thoughts on the nature of consciousness, the idea of digital immortality, and what it means to be human in a world where the lines between biology and technology become increasingly blurred.
Okay, I'm ready. Bring on the mind-bending. Welcome back to the deep dive. In the last two parts, we've been exploring Ray Kurzweil's vision of the technological singularity. You know, this point where artificial intelligence just explodes.
Right.
Nanotechnology revolutionizes our world. And the very definition of what it means to be human is up for grabs. It's a lot to take in.
It is, and Kurzweil doesn't shy away from some of the most profound implications of this vision.
Right.
In fact, he tackles them head on. He pushes us to think about some pretty mind-bending philosophical questions.
And one of the most mind-bending concepts has to be this idea of uploading our consciousness to computers, right?
Yeah.
It's like something straight out of science fiction.
It definitely has that sci-fi feel. But Kurzweil presents it as a natural extension of the accelerating technological trends he outlines. He even uses a thought experiment to illustrate how this might happen. Imagine gradually replacing your biological neurons with non-biological equivalents one by one.
Okay, I'm picturing this. Replace a few neurons. I'm probably still me. But what happens when you replace more and more? At what point does that me disappear?
That's the crux of the question. It's kind of a variation on the ship of Theseus paradox. If you replace every single part of a ship, it's still the same ship. Kurzweil suggests a similar logic applies to our minds. As we replace more of our biological components with non-biological ones, the question of identity becomes really blurry. Does consciousness rely on the physical matter of the brain, or is it something more fundamental that could be transferred to a different medium?
So is Kurzweil suggesting we could become immortal by uploading our minds to computers, living forever as a digital being?
He doesn't make definitive claims about immortality, but he does suggest that uploading consciousness could offer a form of extended existence. Imagine preserving your memories, your personality, and experiences in a digital space, potentially interacting with others in virtual environments, even after your physical body is gone.
It's fascinating, but I can't help but wonder, would that digital copy really be me? Or would it be more like a copy, a twin, with my memories but not my actual consciousness?
That's a question that's probably going to be debated for generations to come. Kurzweil points to a concept called patternism as a way to kind of understand this.
Patternism, what does that even mean?
It's the idea that we're essentially patterns of information.
Okay.
Our thoughts, feelings, memories, all of it can be understood as this complex interplay of information processing. Kurzweil argues that this information, this pattern, is what defines us, not the physical material of the brain itself.
So it's not the hardware, it's the software that matters. Like transferring the data from a hard drive to a cloud server. It's still the same data, just in a different place.
That's a good analogy. If consciousness is ultimately a pattern of information, then theoretically that pattern could be preserved and transferred, even if the original biological hardware is gone.
It's a pretty radical way of thinking about the self. It makes you wonder what it really means to be human in a world where the boundaries between biology and technology are constantly blurring.
Exactly. And Kurzweil doesn't shy away from the spiritual implications either. He suggests that the singularity could be a point where humanity merges with technology, becoming something entirely new. It's almost like a form of transcendence, a blending of consciousness with this vast, interconnected intelligence.
Wow, it's a lot to wrap your head around. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive, from the law of accelerating returns to the potential of AI and nanotech to this idea of uploading our consciousness. What a journey.
It has been quite a journey, and I think one of the most important things to remember is that Kurzweil's vision is just one possible interpretation of the future. There are many other thinkers,
Right.
scientists, and philosophers with different perspectives on where technology is taking us.
That's a good point. And as you've emphasized throughout our conversation, it's crucial to think critically, to question assumptions, and to engage in thoughtful dialogue about these complex issues. We shouldn't just blindly accept any one vision of the future.
Absolutely. The future is not set in stone. It's something we create through our choices and actions, individually and collectively.
So for you, the listener, the takeaway from this deep dive is to stay curious, stay informed, and engage with these big questions about technology and the future. Don't be afraid to challenge assumptions and form your own opinions.
Exactly. This deep dive was just a glimpse into some of the incredible possibilities and potential challenges that lie ahead. The future is unfolding right now, and we all have a role to play in shaping it. Thanks for joining us on this fascinating exploration.